All right, so I'm here with Scott Parker, and I want to start by giving the audience some context on who you are. So let me know if I get this right. You went from, at one point, you went to college, but you didn't study business. You, at one point, were stuck in a corporate job and also struggling a little bit with alcohol addiction, to now you co-own or own how many companies?
About nine companies with 25 plus brick and mortar locations.
And how much do those companies do in total in like annual revenue?
All in, we're probably a little over 30 million now per year.
Okay. So from going at like a stuck-in corporate job, having some of these difficulties to now having a portfolio of companies that do over $30 million per year, like I'm guessing a lot had to change for that transformation. I wanted to focus for the audience on like the mindset change, the behavior change, what you actually did differently, but also like the financial vehicle and how you actually got in a position where you can do that. So let's start with the financial vehicle. You do something that's called what exactly? Is it business acquisition?
Yeah, we call it acquisitions. I think the easier way to say it is buying small businesses. I think oftentimes when people think about acquisitions, they think about mergers and acquisitions, and it's like these two big corporate conglomerates, either one buying the other or the two of them merging together, right? Whereas what I do is more of I would describe as buying small businesses. So it's looking for businesses that we all see out there every day. HVAC companies, painting companies, dry cleaners, laundromats. Think of your day-to-day businesses, and that's what I kind of focus on buying and adding to my portfolio now.
Okay, sweet. And I guess when most people hear that, like buying businesses, I mean, it kind of sounds complex and like something that you do when you have an MBA and maybe you worked at like an investment firm and private equity firm for like 10 years. But obviously that's not what happened with you. So like let's go back to the beginning. Like, did you have anything in your story, anything coming up that like a trust from a parent or some like entrepreneur teaching you every step of the way, or were you just kind of like a normal dude growing up?
Yeah, I was definitely winging it. My parents were amazing people, or are amazing people, but they weren't really that business focused. My dad worked for an insurance company. My mom was a teacher. So I really did not have a business upbringing in the family. And certainly after college, I was, sort of all on my own. I moved to the DC metro area where I've lived for 19 years. With a few $1,000s that I saved from waiting tables. I was a server in a seafood restaurant back home. And I moved here in 2006 and lived in my buddy's basement and tried to figure it out the old fashioned way, sending my resume out and getting a job. And then, yeah, I learned right away that I did not love corporate America at all. And it took me a good 6 or 7 years to save enough money working 2 or 3 jobs to launch my first business. And that was a restaurant and bar back in 2012. And I spent, a lot of time over the past 13 years starting businesses from scratch, and now have come to a place where I'm fully focused just on acquiring small businesses and buying businesses to add to my portfolio instead of starting them.
Right. And I definitely want to talk a lot about that we just mentioned at the end, like how you came to the idea that buying businesses is actually the better move for you. Before we get into that, going back to your story, just to like zoom in a bit, like you grew up in New Jersey, is that
Yeah,
right?
that's right. Yep.
And did you do any type of jobs growing up where you learn what you use now, or like what type of jobs did you have like growing up before college?
Yeah, I started when I was 14 as a dishwasher, and then I worked a lot of jobs in the restaurant industry. In the restaurant industry, I've been a dishwasher, a cook, busboy, barback, food runner, server. I worked as a host. I worked even in valet parking out front of restaurants. So I really worked a lot in the restaurant space. But then I also spent time in the trades growing up. I worked for landscaping companies. I worked for a pool cleaning company. And a lot of the people, I'm from a small town called Summers Point, right outside Ocean City, New Jersey, not far from Atlantic City. And a lot of people that I saw having success growing up were small business owners. It seemed like a lot of the people that were winning in my community were the people that either owned, a landscaping company, an HVAC company. So it sort of always got me, excited about those opportunities. And I definitely learned a lot, growing up about the trades and about small business.
Right. And when you were that like a kid growing up, did you think you would be doing what you're doing now? Like, did you think like, oh, one day, all these companies I'm working for, I'm going to own a whole bunch of them and my businesses are going to be making 30 million a year? Did you have like those ambitious goals as a kid?
Now, I think I was always attracted to the small business space. I was attracted to, the thought of owning restaurants and bars, owning some of the other, service companies that I've mentioned. But I don't think then that I had the vision to think through that I actually would own a bunch of different companies. I think back then I thought a lot about, maybe one day I'll own my own company, own my own small business, but I never thought about sort of building a portfolio and owning a whole bunch of companies like I do now.
Right. And in terms of like any mentorships or like someone helping you along the way when you were a kid, did you have any of that or you just had more of like a normal childhood?
Yeah, no, more of a normal childhood. I sort of learned the old fashioned way as I go. Even in entrepreneurship, I eventually got maybe a mentor or two, but I think I've learned most of my lessons through failure and pain, and the way that most people learn, kind of just figuring it out as you go.
Right. And then you then went to college. And what college did you go to?
James Madison University, yep, down in
Okay.
Harrisonburg, Virginia.
And you didn't study business or accounting or finance. What did you end up studying?
Yeah, it's funny because I was in the business school at first, and I remember my sophomore year, my first semester in accounting, sophomore year, I think I got an F. And then the second, I think I retook the class spring semester, and I think I got like a C plus or something. And then I
Yeah.
remember taking other schools in business class like computer information systems and economics and doing really bad in those classes too.
Right.
And I always loved just to read and write. That's what I enjoyed more than anything. So I'm like, let me be an English major. I love to read. I love to write. I'm good at it. And so that's what I switched over to. And so, I came out of college. And because I had an English degree, people were always asking me like, "Okay, are you going to be a teacher, or what are you going to do?" And I really didn't know. I didn't want to be a teacher. I think that's one of the most incredible and probably highest callings that there are. To be a teacher is awesome, but for some reason it just didn't feel right to me, and I wanted to go into business, and so that's just what I ended up doing.
So just to be clear, to do what you do now, business acquisition, you don't need to be good at economics, math, finance. Like you're kind of proof of that decided just to study English because you were actually studying in those or struggling with those topics, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think you need an MBA. I don't think you need to have a college degree in business. I'm sure those things can help. I hear that getting an MBA really helps you expand your network, so that can be good, right? But yeah, I don't have any formal business training when it comes to college. I could not really hack it at the business school in my college. And then yeah, coming out of 9 to 5ing and working for corporate jobs. I sold insurance for a while. Really didn't like that. I sold software for a couple different companies. That was okay. But yeah, going into small business, I had no real formal training in it other than growing up working in it. And I didn't have any formal business training from any school either.
Mm. And then let's talk about the corporate jobs. So you mentioned insurance and software. Is that like what you did right after college as you started basically like a corporate sales job?
Yeah, actually, after college, I was back home in New Jersey for about a year, kind of just working in restaurants and figuring out what I was going to do. And my dad was like, "Man, you got to move to a city. There's a lot more opportunity there." And all my friends from JMU were living in Arlington, Virginia, about 7 or 8 guys that had moved there. And so I decided to move there as well. There was a lot of job opportunity and all that kind of stuff. And so the first thing I did was insurance. It was selling auto, home, and life insurance. Wearing a suit every day into an office, which 19 years later sounds absolutely psychotic, right? There's no one really thinking about that, or wearing an actual full suit with a tie and everything
Yeah.
to an office. You never see people doing that anymore.
Yeah.
But that's what it was back then. And man, right out of the gates, I was probably 1 or 2 months in, and I was thinking to myself already, like, this isn't for me. I'm really not loving the office vibes. I'm really not enjoying. I don't feel any passion towards what I'm doing. And so right then, when I was probably 24, 25 years old, I started realizing to myself, like, I want to get a small business. And back then I had so much experience in restaurants. And I still was kind of on the party scene, if you will. I was a bartender, I was a promoter, I was doing stuff like that. And so I just decided when I was 24 or 25, like, all right, I'm going to try to become a bar owner. And, that was when I came up with that goal because of how unhappy I really was with 9 to 5ing.
So you, within 1 to 2 months of the corporate job, you kind of knew it wasn't for you. How long did it actually take though to take that first step with, getting the first bar?
Yeah, so for me, it took a good 5.5, about 6 years. I started 9 to 5ing in the fall of 2006, and I opened my first bar in the fall of 2012. So it took all that time to save the money. Back then, entrepreneurship wasn't as buzzy. People weren't talking about it as much. So I didn't know anything about getting investors or how to do a bank loan or how to get the money for becoming a business owner. So essentially, I just worked for 6 years and saved the money myself. I kept my 9 to 5 job, and then I was, waiting tables 5 to 6 nights a week, bartending at times, and really just working around the clock to save as much money as possible so I could, open my first business. And after about 5, 6 years of doing that, I saved something like $120,000. And that's what I invested into my first bar, which opened in the fall of 2012.
And that's a question that I did have for you eventually is, ask about, do you even need money to do what you do now in terms of like having 120K liquid to invest in businesses? I mean, I know that's what you did, but just since we're on that topic, let's say I wanted to get into business acquisition right now. Do I need to have, $100,000 liquid to get started? Or how much money would you need to get into this?
Yeah, so you definitely don't need too much money. And it depends on how creative you can get and how skilled you can be at this. But I do see a lot of people completing transactions with very little money out of pocket, or at times almost no money out of pocket. And there's a couple reasons for that I'll break down real quick. The first is banks love to loan money for business acquisitions. And the reason for that is if I go to the bank with a brand new idea, something that's unproven, and I say, hey, I've got this great business idea. I'm ready to get open. All I need is some money. I'm going to be super successful. I'm going to kill it. The bank looks at the business idea and they think, yeah, you seem pretty enthusiastic about it. Maybe the business plan's okay. But this concept is unproven. You might succeed or you might fail. And we just don't know. We don't feel that good about it because there's a big chance that you might fail at this, like a lot of small businesses do, right?
Right.
Now, if on the flip side, if I go to the bank with a business that's been in existence for 25 or 30 years and it's spitting out, 300, 400, $500,000 a year in profit, and then I show it to the bank and I say, look at this business. This business has been here for 25 or 30 years. It's already pretty profitable. I'm going to have no problem making the payments on the loan to you. The bank really, really likes that deal because they look at this as a much less, a deal with a lot less risk, because it's already a proven business that's already making money and has been making money for many, many years. So banks love these businesses, right? So that's the first thing is you really can leverage the SBA and SBA loans and banks to get those going. The second thing I would mention is just like it's easier for banks, it's also easier to get investors for a business acquisition than it is for a new idea for the same reason. I can go to an investor and say, hey, here's a business I want to start. I think it's going to make $500,000. The investor's thinking about whether I'm going to fail or if I'm going to be successful. Or I can go to an investor and say, hey, here's a business I'm going to buy. It's already making $500,000. So right away, I'm going to be able to start making my loan payments back to you. Or right away, depending on how the deal is structured, right away, you're going to start getting checks. You're going to start getting kickbacks and start making money on this deal. Investors like that a lot more too. So by leveraging investors, by leveraging banks, you can definitely get a lot of deals done. And the last thing I'll mention on this is seller financing. So what is seller financing? Seller financing is when the person selling the business sort of becomes the bank and they let you pay them payments over time instead of asking for all the money from you up front. So that way, again, it's just an ideal way if they're selling the business, for X amount of dollars, instead of you having to give them all that money up front, they say, hey, I'm going to sell you this business for X dollars, but you're going to pay me monthly every month for the next 5, 7, or 10 years, whatever the case may be. So by being very creative and structuring your deals with either a bank loan, an investor, or seller financing from the seller, you can really get into a lot of these deals without that much money and sometimes with no money out of pocket.
Right. So the lesson from your story is like, if I want to do business acquisition, I don't have to wait 6 years working 9 to 5, working in the evenings, bartending to save all this money. I just have to learn the game in terms of learning how to understand seller financing, understand small bank loans, understanding, investments and proposing to investors. And I can kind of bypass and like speed run that process that took you like 6 years, right?
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the people that I see getting deals done in the acquisition space are people with no business ownership experience. There are people that are just like I was back in the day. They're like, I don't want to be at my 9 to 5 anymore. I want control of my time. I want control of my income. I want to be able to build something that I own myself. And I see people getting deals done with very little money, with very little business experience, and it happens all the time. Now, do you have to dig to find some of those deals? Absolutely. I'm not saying on the first day of searching for a business, you're going to find a great business that's going to, you're going to be able to buy with no money down, right? It's going to
Right.
take some work, and it's going to take some digging. But those deals are out there. I see them happen all the time, and I've experienced some of them myself. The deals that we've done have always had at least some seller financing. So the seller is holding at least some of the note. We're paying the seller back over time. We've done SBA loans that have been fantastic to buy businesses, and where the SBA puts most of the money in. And we've also leveraged investors as well by getting people to invest alongside us and help us buy businesses. So definitely there are a lot of ways to do it, and you don't need a ton of money. You don't need a ton of experience. You just got to be willing to learn and then work hard at it to find the deal that's going to be right for you.
Okay, cool. And then if we zoom back in on your story, so you saved up the 120,000 because at that point you didn't know about any of what we just talked about with the, seller financing, investors, small bank loans. But what did you then do? Like, how did you actually make, I guess, mentally first, like psychologically, how did you make the decision that you were actually going to pivot or at least take on something outside of 9 to 5? Because I'm sure, for most people, it's like stability in 9 to 5, even if it's not exactly what you want. But, buying a business, that sounds risky. That sounds like a big leap. So how did you actually make that leap?
Yeah, so I think for me, the main driver was just a real total lack of happiness in what I was doing 9 to 5.
Mm.
I was still, when I made this decision to sort of go out on my own, I was still in my 20s. And I think it was very easy for me to think and rationalize that I'm not happy doing this. And if I'm going to work potentially another 40 plus years, I better find something that I like doing for those 40 years, or else I'm going to spend my life really unhappy. And we hear about it all the time. People know this. I think it's a very common thing that people are not that content with what they're doing, probably a great majority of the time. It's pretty wild when we think about it that a majority of people are going to spend a majority of their lives, because think about it, you're working for 40, 50 years, doing something that you don't love, or not, maybe not even love, but that you don't have any passion for, you don't like at all. And I just couldn't see myself doing that. And I also just felt from seeing other people who were successful as business owners that there was nothing that they have that I don't have as far as mentally and the capacity to be successful. And I think that's the thing I would tell, so many people out there that are looking to buy their first business, that, don't get just totally, don't sell yourself on your own inexperience. Don't tell yourself, well, I don't have any experience, I'm not going to be able to do this, because the great majority of people do not have experience at what they go into, right? And that goes all the way to the top and the biggest business people in the world, right? Like Jeff Bezos didn't have any experience at doing e-commerce when he started Amazon. Mark Zuckerberg didn't have any experience at social media sites when he started Facebook, right? And so, those are examples, obviously, of some of the business titans that are the biggest in the world. But you could say that about almost everybody in business. Yeah, there are some people in business that have a bunch of experience in one specific field and then they go into that. But the great majority of people that are owning and running a business today did not have much experience in the business that they own. That's a fact.
Mm.
And so, that was something that really was in the back of my head. I would just see other business owners and think like, if he can do it, maybe I can do it too. Or if she can crush it at what she's doing, maybe I can do it too. And so that came out to be true for me. And I think it is true for most people that they can be super successful in business. They just got to get out there and be willing to go through the trauma and the hard times and the struggle of learning something new, but they can get out there and be super successful once they're willing to do that.
Mm. And what would you say, like, based on what you experienced with that jump and that leap, if someone's in a similar spot, and maybe it's not business acquisition, I mean, maybe it is after, they learn more about it and they hear this and stuff like this, maybe that's something they're interested in. But just in general, the transition from 9 to 5 to doing something that aligns more with, what you're passionate about or what you feel energized doing and what you actually want to show up to work for. What advice would you give those people? Because I'm sure, like, even watching this video, there's going to be a lot of people in that position. Maybe they do have a 9 to 5, or maybe they are a beginner entrepreneur, but they haven't quite taken the full leap into committing to it 100%. So what advice would you give those people?
I would tell people what I find myself saying in a lot of conversations these days. I would tell them that I believe business acquisitions in the next 10 to 15 years is essentially the gold rush of our time. I don't think I can tell you, I know I've never seen this type of opportunity in the small business space. Um, we are just living in a time where so many people, or so many of the businesses that are owned by people that are 55, 60, 65 years and older. And a lot of those folks want to retire. They don't want to do it anymore. And so there's so much opportunity out there of people who are selling their businesses. And there's not that many people out there hunting for these businesses. Now, are there some folks doing it? Yes. Is this a very popular time for this sort of thing? Yes. But when you think about the whole spectrum of people who are working in the world, working to make a living, you got the great majority of people are always going to work for someone else. I don't know the data on it or the numbers, but that's a huge percentage of the population. It's a majority of the population is always going to work for someone else. Then you've got the people that are going to own their own business. And the great majority of those people want to start their own business. They want it to be their thing. They've got a vision. They've got a dream. They've got one specific industry that they want to go into and launch their perfect thing, right? Then you've got a very small percentage of the entire people that are working for a living that are out to buy and acquire businesses. There's not that many people trying to do it. Are there more now than there were 10 years ago? Because it's very popular. It's very buzzy. There's a lot of people talking about it on social media. There's a lot of people writing articles about it. Yes. So there are more people doing it. But how many of those people are truly focused on it, executing? How many of those people are really going to put in the work to find a great deal? How many of those people are going to take the leap and jump into it? Not that many. So if you can be one of those people, if you can really dedicate yourself to this process, this is a tremendous opportunity for you to build wealth, get a great company that gives you the lifestyle that you want and the income that you want. This opportunity may not come around again. If you look back 10, 20, 30 years ago, those people I just referenced that are 55, 65 and up, they were 35 and 45. They weren't thinking about retirement. They weren't thinking about selling their business. Now they're older. And so there's so many businesses for sale. You can look up the data yourself, but it is estimated that trillions and trillions of dollars is going to change hands between those that are retiring and those that want to buy those businesses. So I would just say that if you ever were thinking about taking the leap, if you want to jump into entrepreneurship, if you've been dying to do it, but you just haven't known how or when, you were going to do it, acquisitions is probably your best bet. It's just the best way to, get into a business for less money down, with less risk, and with a better chance that you're going to succeed long term. So if you've been waiting, all this time to figure out what you're going to do, this is probably what you want to do.
Yeah, and I think that's powerful because, when I first learned about business, I thought the only way to become an entrepreneur was risk it all. You had to start your own thing. You had to like sell everything you own. You had to go around telling everyone that, you're an entrepreneur and you're betting on yourself. And then you had to go out and, do every single thing. You had to get the leads, you had to sell the leads, you had to fulfill on the leads. And it becomes this like, I think that's why so many people don't do it because it is a lot if that's how you go. But basically, what you learned after doing what I just mentioned, starting everything yourself, is that you can actually get into this space and into entrepreneurship in a lot more efficient and less risky way, which is you go to businesses that are already profitable, already making money, already have management in place, systems in place, and you simply get creative in finding ways to buy those businesses through these bank loans, through investors, through seller financing. And then you basically just take over a company that for the last 10 years has already been working and operating, and you just got to make sure that it just keeps doing what it's already doing.
Yep.
So I think that's super powerful that I don't think most people know. And even me, who's someone who's been super interested in entrepreneurship for a while, I just found out about this
Yeah.
recently. So I think that's super powerful. And then if we zoom back into your story, because this all came from that leap that you took getting to buying your first bar. How did that go? How did that bet end up going? So you bought your first bar. This was around like 2012 or something like this.
Yeah, yeah, it's 2012. So what we actually did, the way we structured this was my partners already had, a restaurant and bar there, and so I bought into an existing restaurant and bar. We changed it into a different concept. So even my first business, I guess I, in a sense, opened a business, but also really bought my way into a business at the same time. I essentially bought equity. I bought 50% of the business. When we launched that bar, my dream was really for us to do $4 million in sales annually. And my partner, he was like, I've been in this industry a long time. 4 million is really hard to do. We could still make good money if we do 3 million, but I don't want you to get your hopes up and think we're going to hit 4 million and we're not. I had my heart set on 4 million. I'm like, we're going to do it. I know. And we pushed as hard as we could, and we built a place that sort of became a phenomenon, became insanely popular around here. And instead of hitting that $4 million goal, our first year we did 6.2 million. So just we blew it out of the park. And I think that for me was sort of an aha moment where I said to myself, everybody tells me how much businesses fail. Everybody tells me how hard the restaurant and bar industry is. Well, here it is. We did it. We're doing really well in it. And that was what sort of made me think, well, what other businesses could I go into? What other businesses could I buy? Could I start? And it kind of all sort of snowballed from there.
And then that turned out to be an amazing bet and paid off. Since then, though, I'm guessing it hasn't always been rainbow and sunshine and like companies doing, 6 million every time that you start them. Have you experienced failures in this space with businesses?
Oh my God. Yeah, a ton. And I think that was, that first win that was so big was sort of a gift and a curse because we really won. But I think I got sort of overly optimistic. I think I got a little, sort of high on my own success and thought that, I wasn't going to fail and I'm just going to open all kinds of businesses and crush it. And obviously that's not reality, right? So there was a bunch of failures along the way. And having those failures is really what made me lean full tilt into buying businesses instead of starting them.
Mm.
My girlfriend was pregnant with our son, and I had a couple businesses flop. One was a restaurant, and one was a gym concept, and both of them failed pretty quick. Call it within a year. And I was, I really had this sort of moment where I thought to myself, what am I going to do to keep growing my portfolio and provide a future for my kid, my new son that's on the way, but without having as much risk. And that's when I really started to dive deep into buying businesses and how that can be, provide that same success, but with a lot less risk. And that's why at this point I've learned so much about it and done a bunch of deals successfully that it's night and day. It's not even close to how well you can do so much. I can do so much better. People in general, I believe, can do so much better buying businesses than starting their own. That it's not even close. I'm definitely focused 100% on acquisitions at this point as a result.
Mm. And then for like me or anyone else interested in doing what you do, like the first lesson is that I can, get from your story is one, I don't need to have some crazy degree or background to do this. The second lesson is I don't need to have, 6 years of saving up money to do this. I can, get creative with other ways to finance these deals. And the third lesson is that with what you just mentioned of you having all these different failures and things like this, I don't need to start and fail with companies and lose this money and stuff like this. I can kind of, speed run that and just take away the lesson, which is basically, and correct me if I'm wrong, but from your opinion and your experience, the least risky way to get into entrepreneurship and really grow your wealth and compound it long term is to buy businesses, is business acquisition.
Without question. Without question. If you look at the data yourself, you can search it, Google it, Chat GPT it, whatever you want to do. The data is very clear. Do businesses fail when that people buy? Sure, there's always going to be things that happen, right? But the failure rate on businesses that are bought versus businesses that are someone starting a business is night and day. There's just so much less risk in buying something that is already and has already been successful. And so there's no question. And I would say that that is correct in any era. It was correct 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Buying a business was less risky. And I think the difference now is we are in the golden age of buying businesses because of all the baby boomers that are retiring. They call it the silver tsunami because of the silver hair, the gray hair of some of these boomers who are selling their businesses. And now there's just this wave of businesses out there. So yes, I think it is the most least risky endeavor as far as getting started in business. And then on top of that, this is the best time in history to do it. So I just think for anyone that wants to grow their portfolio, wants to attain wealth, wants to get successful in business, but really limit their risk for any reason, whether they have kids like me or whether they're just a risk averse person or whatever reason they have, this is the time and this is the way to do it, buying businesses.
Okay, awesome. And now if we fast forward to today, how many different types of businesses do you own? I saw dog daycare,
Yeah.
still some restaurants, still some
Yeah.
service businesses. So what are all the businesses that you operate today?
Yeah. Currently, I'll start with our dog daycare and boarding brand. We have a dog daycare and boarding brand. That brand has 10 corporate locations that we own around the DC metro area. It has 3 franchise locations currently open, with about 10 or 12 more franchise locations that are going to be opening around the country. A little compliment to that brand is we opened a high-end cat hotel that's doing fantastic. It's about 2 years old. So that's kind of what we're doing in the pet care space. So call it 14 or 15 store locations in the pet care space. We've also got our barbershop chain that has 4 locations, soon to be 5. We do really great work there. It's exploding. Our shops are super busy. Our barbers do really well financially. And that brand is going great as well. Coming back to restaurants, of course, I'm still a partner in 6 restaurants currently. Hopefully soon I can say 7 and 8. I have a couple deals I'm working on to acquire a couple more restaurants. So hopefully soon to be 7 or 8 restaurants. But that industry is still a big passion of mine and just something I love and something I've been doing since I was 14 years. So almost 14 years old, so almost 30 years now. So I'm still in that one as well. And then I've got a facilities maintenance company. When I say facilities maintenance, what we do is we work with retail stores. So, for example, one of our clients is 7-Eleven, and we take care of their stores throughout the Northeast. If they have a problem with the HVAC, or they need a plumber, or they need a painter, or they need someone, a locksmith, whatever, they contact us and we help them get a great professional for that. And we sort of maintain the facilities from afar. And then we recently also acquired a painting company. So it's residential and commercial painting. We paint homes, we paint commercial buildings, all that kind of stuff. So I think I got just about everything now. I'd have to check the list for what I currently have. And obviously I'm super excited to also have several deals in the pipeline to continue acquisitions.
Right.
That's one thing about these acquisitions. They can take a little time. Once you start getting a deal going, it can take 6 months, 12 months to close that deal. So you got to keep building your pipeline up. But I think I got just about everything, and that's my current portfolio.
So the follow-up question I have to that is, because you have so many different domains that you're in, there's no way you could have been like an expert at all these domains. So when you buy these businesses, it sounds like you don't necessarily need to be an expert in, for example, dog and cats to own these dog care and cat hotel. And the
Yeah.
same thing with like service businesses. And also, I mean, you did have bar background in the bar, but it seems like that's the only one you actually had some type of background in.
Yeah, that's a fact. Most of the businesses that I own, I had no experience in. What I always recommend to people and where I think you can be successful is I recommend like 6 to 12 months of very deep learning. Meaning if you're going to buy a business, let's say you're going to buy, a plumbing business, you don't need to be a plumber. You don't need to get under sinks and, fix pipes and unclog toilets and all that kind of stuff. You don't need to know how to do those specific things. but you really need to understand your industry. So if you're going to buy a plumbing company, I would recommend you spend 6 to 12 months diving deep on YouTube, books, learning everything you can about an industry to then run it. And that's generally my strategy as well. Is buying, learning as I go. Now it may depend based on the given industry. So for example, we just bought the painting company I just referenced. We bought that with a partner, and he is going to be the operator. So he's really the one doing all the learning. He's the one getting to know the industry and understanding the industry. And what I am really doing is more of helping him think through sales, operations, building a team, expanding, growing a great culture within the organization, that kind of stuff. So I can take all of my lessons from my other businesses and apply it to the new business that we bought together without me ever learning the industry. But if you are going to be the operator, I do highly recommend, 6 to 12 months of diving deep, really learn the industry. It doesn't mean you're going to be an expert. It doesn't mean you yourself need to know how to do the work on site. That's not going to happen. But you should learn the industry, and you can do that, in a few months, 6 months, a year, the old-fashioned way: YouTube, books, networking, and meeting people in the space. But to sum it all up, you absolutely, positively do not need to be an expert in the industry that you're going into when you buy a business.
Mm. All right, so let's say then I know I had the opportunity to meet you in person, which was great. And then after this conversation as well, like my takeaways are that like I'm fired up to buy some businesses, right? I want to go buy some businesses. Let's say apart from the studying for 6 to 12 months, like tomorrow, if I could just do one step to just take one action to start the journey, because I've learned entrepreneurship is a lot, you just pull a thread and then the next action becomes apparent once you take the first one. You don't have to know everything before you start. But let's say tomorrow I'm fired up. I want to get started. I just want to get my feet wet. I don't want to spend any money. I don't want to do anything like that yet. What can I do tomorrow to, get the ball rolling?
So what I would say is what I would start to spend time on first and foremost is to educate yourself on how to find deals. Once you find a business that you want to buy and have a great conversation with the owner, you can figure everything else out as you go, as far as getting a bank loan and the financing and how you're going to operate the business. But the biggest thing that is going to determine your success is finding deals. So there are a number of online sites that you can use to find deals. You can use business brokers that are already actively selling deals in your market. You could do it the old-fashioned way, which could often be the most successful, which is cold calling, knocking on doors, going to find deals yourself. There's a number of ways to do it, but the first thing I would start looking into and researching is what are the best ways to find small businesses to buy, best ways to search for acquisitions, and get out there and start looking for deals. It may sound a little counterintuitive because you may think to yourself, well, I need to learn a lot about this before I start looking for deals. But where you are going to spend the most time and what is going to take the longest is finding a great deal. You can learn everything else as you go. You can learn everything else in your free time. But if you don't find a deal, then you're never going to need to know everything that you're going to learn anyway, right? So the first thing I would do is start figuring out how are you going to spend your time searching for deals. And I would do it in a disciplined way, meaning carve out your schedule each week and say, okay, 2 hours every day, Monday through Friday after work, I can look for deals, 5 hours on Saturday and 6 hours on Sunday. These are the times each week that I'm going to do nothing but hunt for deals, and build that structure into your search and start pounding the pavement and getting online and looking for deals, because that is going to be the thing that is the hardest thing to accomplish. Finding the deal, in my opinion, the hardest part. Once you find the deal, yeah, it's going to be tricky to figure out the negotiation and the funding and operations and taking the deal on and all that stuff. But if you don't find a great deal, forget about everything else. Forget about your lack of knowledge. Forget about the money. Forget about the operations. You've got to find a great deal. Until you do that, you're never going to be where you want to be successful with this. So that's where I would spend my time at first. And then as I'm looking for deals and all that stuff, I would start to learn the rest about funding and financing and everything else.
All right, awesome, awesome. Now, to wrap this up, I know by the time this interview goes public, you might have already have shared a project that, you're working on behind the scenes. But is the best way, by the time this goes public for people to learn more from you and more about business acquisition, is the best way to go to your website and correct me if I'm wrong, they can sign up for your newsletter that's about to come out. And that's where they can, kind of have this relationship with you where you're going to be sharing, what you learned, you're going to be sharing what you're currently doing and the deals you're buying, and then maybe even like other opportunities going forward. Is that the best place to connect with you moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. If you go to my website, well, you can find it on my Instagram. My Instagram is just my name at Scott Parker. Then you can find my website link there. From my website link, you can join my mailing list. I'm sending out emails once a week on business acquisitions. Emails about deals that I've done, emails about deals I've seen in the market, emails about deals that I've lost. And so I think you can get a lot of good free content from that. On top of that, you can join my webinars. And then if you really like what you hear and you think we can work well together, you can join my program as well too. My program is a paid program, but you can jump in the mix with us where we do calls a couple times per week on group calls to talk through deals, talk through the buying process, talk through questions that anybody has, and really try to get you the support that you need to get out there and execute and buy your first deal.
Awesome. Awesome. Sounds good. So this will conclude this interview with Scott Parker. Again, someone who went from, normal corporate job, kind of stuck, had these different, adversities that he overcame to then take this leap, get into entrepreneurship, start and fail a bunch of businesses to come to the lesson that, business acquisition is really his move going forward where he sees the most opportunities. So great talking with you, Scott. Again, if anyone wants to learn more about Scott or learn about, what he offers and what you can learn from him, you can check him out on Instagram and you can check out his website and sign up for the email newsletter. Thanks again, Scott, and we'll talk soon.
You got it, brother. Thank you.